Thanks everyone for joining and just taking the time out of your day to learn a little more about K2. So let's go ahead and get started and dive in here. So, way of introduction, I'm Brandon Brown with K2. Today we really want to focus on taking a deeper look at the latest release from K2 and specifically how it can be used to transform your business processes. So let's go ahead and dive in here. So at K2, we've got one simple mission, and that is to automate every process in every organization. We at K2 are passionate about, how we can empower our customers to innovate within their own organizations. We often see that our customers are having a lot of challenges and problems they're trying to solve, lots of tools and options out there in the marketplace. And we really want to simplify the approach on to see how our customers can use to build more mission critical processes, maybe perhaps built from the enterprise, but also empower the business to be able to automate and have some innovation within their own line of business units. Right, and one of the reasons why automation and innovation is so important is because we know that there'll be winners and losers in this digital economy. Recently Harvard Business Review did a study and found that 47% believe that their business model will be obsolete in the near future. But when you really translate that into what that means and the impact of that is that the rate of process automation is important to their business. Right, over 80% feel that automation plays a key role into the future of their success. But then when you couple that, how do they achieve that success, right? When you find that almost 79 or almost 80% initiative will be impacted by lack of resources. So great if they realize and you folks realize that automation is important. How can you achieve that and do that effectively? And that's a challenge in the marketplace that we see overall and also within our own customer base. Right, but we have people that are successful on our platform. Take guys in St. Thomas as an example, where they're not only automating internal processes around things like human resources, safety and compliance processes, but also to improve overall healthcare to their patients. Right, by building kind of an end-to-end acute management system right on K2. We're seeing that in some of the financial services area where you take, First West Credit Union as an example, where it's been, used to reduce, their member process from hours, down to 40 minutes. And again, why is this important, right? For them, it's, helps dramatically improve customer experience and the value they bring back to their own members. Right, but we're also seeing this at scale, where it's mission critical type processes, where Shell is also using K2 to automate a number of processes across the organization, everything from refinery safety to staff onboarding, and then finance price processes as well. All these processes are critical to their business. Right, but we also want to do this at scale. It's not just about deploying a handful of mission critical processes. And Kimberly Clark, as well as many others, are a great example of this, where they're seeing value of the K2 platform across the entire organization. This is how organizations can be put on a path to automate every process by providing a platform not just for IT to create complex applications, but to put the power in the business, right, to automate their own processes. And this is really what it's about. Right, so where do we kind of see this? Where are some of the net outcomes that we've seen from our customer base? Forrester recently did an impact study that found that when customers have adopted K2, they've reduced their overall dev time by almost 80%. That's a massive impact in terms of the type of innovation folks can provide back to the organization. We've seen a tremendous ROI, over a 450% of ROI based on their investment in K2. And that really has presented them, with a net value of, a little over $5 million back to the business. There's an incredible amount of investment or savings that can be done based on this investment. All right, so how does K2 work? Oftentimes it's about identifying the process needs, across the organization. And for each process, there's some line of business system that supports at least part of these processes. So as an example, if we look at finance or operations or customer support, there's all these different systems that we typically see. Everything like Office 365 and SharePoint, Salesforce, Oracle, SQL databases for perhaps maybe some custom homegrown solutions, and then custom dev projects as well. And you have ancillary service things like DocuSign that can kind of piecemealed into all these different systems that play a key role to the organization. But from a K2 perspective, it's not just about process, but the systems that are a part of that process. And one of the key pieces of K2 is to be able to encapsulate a lot of that integration to what we call a K2 Smart Object. And a K2 Smart Object is really a reusable component that we can use that line of business integration to not only read but write information back and then use that throughout the different stack. Right, so once you have that smart object, this is where you can build, feature-rich forms on top of those integration points. So imagine, having a quote in this example where, quote information might come from Salesforce, but it also might come from other information like, perhaps customer history from SAP. And to be able to aggregate that across multiple different systems is a key differentiator and one of the reasons why people would use and adopt K2. But then going beyond the forms is having the process that might drive some of those forms and to automate those processes. So to be able to build powerful workflows. But again, these powerful workflows isn't necessarily just by IT. While this is a tool that they can use to build very complex and comprehensive processes, it's also a tool that traditional citizen developer, someone that's somewhat tech savvy but not necessarily a developer, can use and drive innovation within their own organization. And another key asset of this is really be able to report on this. So once you've automated those processes, to get a lot more visibility into those processes themselves. Really identify what those bottlenecks might be. Who is it going to? Where are things stuck in a process? And that ultimately leads to just better process improvement overall. Right, but again, as I mentioned before, it's not just building, one or two applications. The real power comes when you start going wide and really automating processes across the organization. And within our customer base, we're seeing, a ton of different use cases. Everything from, customer or HR onboarding to incident management, again, across multiple industries, and also for, horizontal solutions as well. But to be able to build these components, those integration components of smart objects, views and forms, and also workflows, but to be able to share and reuse it out across the organization really allows you to kind of build on those assets you put in K2 and allow other people to essentially enjoy and benefit from those innovation. Right, so how do we bring this all together? Right, when you look at the core automation platform from K2, it's really about automating those processes, creating electronic forms, and then integrate with those different systems and getting those deeper analytics that we mentioned. But we want to go beyond that, right? Is taking those core pillars and really be able to take those solutions to mobile. Sometimes in certain organizations that's a strategic initiative that they have where any applications built need to be part of a mobile device. And then other times it's not necessarily strategic where they just simply want the flexibility. They may not traditionally have put in development effort into putting a mobile only app, but they want to be able to create a form on the desktop, but then also allow those mobile users to do it and be able to do that without any additional investment. Security and governance is key. If we look at going beyond just IT-based built solutions, and how do we really empower the business or citizen developers to do that, but allowing IT to maintain that control. So Platform allows you to do that, right? A lot of guardrails that you can put in place to kind of secure and govern how the platform is used and who can ultimately use it. And then having a deployment of choice, right? Whether you want to deploy this and run this in the cloud, or have your own private cloud, or something you want to run K2 on premises. So again, K2 kind of gives you that choice of deployment in terms of how you want to run and operate the K2 infrastructure. Right, and we also want to get you to get started. Lots of different solutions that we've seen from a number of different customers. So K2 has a series of smart starters that allows you to kind of pick up common type scenarios and get started very quickly. So what does it look like to build an app in K2? So here we have an example of the K2 Workflow Designer. We can build simple or complex workflows that span people and system. Just drag and drop logical shapes to model out your process, freeform canvas to be able to design it how you wish, and you'll be able to encapsulate a lot of logic to make it more readable for different users. All right, to be able to incorporate business rules that can be easily built and understand to improve overall automation. Be able to use context from your different line of business systems. So in this example, be able to say order details from an order smart object, perhaps coming from SAP or Salesforce, to be able to model that into your actual rules. Right, to be able to drive, process with escalation and reminders. So when these workflows are running, what are the rules and escalations that you might want to put to ultimately drive work to completion? right? And as you're designing these process, we want to be there, every step of the way. So as you're modeling out that process and it needs to be configured, we'll give you kind of these badges or hints to be able to say, what things might be needed. And this ultimately helps you, build out those processes and guide you along the way. We also have Smart Assist that also is there to help you build these processes. And these are just not only, contextual help guides, but also auto configures your workflow based on common patterns and behavior that we see out there. So here's an example where it's, mirroring up a workflow to a smart form, and I can, have it do it for me, which K2 will automatically configure based on, traditional patterns that we've seen out there, or you can override that and configure it yourself. But the Smart Assist is something that you see throughout the whole K2 Designer, and it really helps those folks to be able to, build those processes, on their own with minimal help or guidance. So now let's take a look at forms. So here you have the K2 Forms Designer, where I can build, again, simple or very comprehensive different form layouts here. So in this example, we have, a customer quote, where I have really a collection of views that I can reuse across the entire platform. So here I'm reusing a quote details one on the left-hand side, which kind of shows me just that, quote details coming out, in this case, Salesforce, right? But I can also maybe want to look at some of the account details. So perhaps there's an existing view out there that I can just drag and drop and reuse those account details. Or I can all use the rich set of controls we have there on the left to model out and create your own form and rich UI experiences. Right, when you see a lot of forms tools out on the market, and one of the biggest things that, where some of those forms tools don't necessarily meet the requirements of the business is really through the rules. So it's one thing to have, standard layout and a different set of controls. It's another thing to be able to handle those complex rules that are needed often for the business. So very powerful rules engine to be able to do, data validation, dynamic display logic, things like, if I check this box, I want to dynamically show these other 5 fields and make those required. Making sure that the data is being entered incorrectly. But you do this all within our native rules designer. No need to jump out into JavaScript or some other proprietary scripting language to get those rules done. This should all be able to be done by a citizen developer, but then also have the rule power to be able to do that for more technical folks that need the more comprehensive type solutions. Right, when we build these forms, we just want to build it once. We don't want to have to build it multiple times on multiple different devices. And we see that a lot with forms tools in the market in general. And K2 believes that, if you're going to spend the time and effort to build these forms, you should do it once. You shouldn't have to build it per layout. Right? So when you build a K2 Smart Form, it'll just natively work in all the different platforms that you see out there. Full responsive design, so we'll take advantage of the real estate given to us from those devices. But again, if I want to make a mobile only or tablet only type device, we have that ability to override and build specifically for those. But by default, you just don't have to. It'll just work on those devices. Right, but we also want to take these smart forms and perhaps embed those into other solutions. SharePoint is a big part of that, where K2 has unmatched integration into SharePoint and Office 365 in general, and to be able to take these forms and use those as native forms in SharePoint is one aspect of it, but then also to be able to embed our smart forms into other solutions as well. Right, so let's kind of take a little deeper dive into integration, right? It's really the heart of K2. So when we're building these workflows and building these forms, line of business system information is obviously key, right? So we see a lot of different sources out there. Again, SQL, Salesforce, SAP, and the like. To be able to reuse that smart object to build to multiple different solutions from K2. And that's a key aspect of here is that if I want to build this integration, I only want to have to do this once. And then through governance and security, I might want to control who is allowed to see these smart objects. So if I want to build a form, great, who has access to perhaps, these Salesforce or SAP objects. Or if I want to build these processes, who has access to these core line of business systems. So IT can kind of set up the appropriate guardrails to control who has access to these assets and ultimately can build and run these different solutions. Right, but when we look at integration, there's a lot of integration that K2 has natively out of the box, but we also want to leverage a lot of the innovation that we've seen out in the industry. and Microsoft Flow being one of that, where Microsoft Flow, offers, over 100 different connectors to various systems, and not just be able to, read and write data, but you all trigger events from different systems. And so K2 wants to be able to play in that space where, let's say you have a flow that maybe, has a document that got updated in Dropbox or has some event from Yammer or some other different systems, even non-Microsoft based systems, and be able to capture those events and start a K2 process. Right, so here we have a K2 branded and Microsoft managed connector, where if are using Microsoft Flow, you can search for K2, and essentially based on some integration event or other events, we can trigger a K2 process through its rich API. Right, and then once we've built these solutions, we want to be able to get some analytics against those solutions, right? And this is one of the reasons why people automate those processes is to get some visibility and some insight into what's going on. So there's a whole host of, out-of-the-box reports that you can kind of see, key metrics and trending. You really identify those bottlenecks, get real-time insights into not only the processes, but for individual users. So as I, as an end user, is logging in, not only am I seeing my tasks and I can action my task and work with my tasks, but I can get some analytics about the work I'm doing. Where am I spending my time? Are some tasks harder or taking longer than others? If so, why? So it's not just for those managers to be able to get insights in the process, but really giving more intelligence and information to the end users as well. Right, and just like with smart forms, we can embed these workflows, or excuse me, these reports into a host of different applications. And you can embed them in smart forms themselves, so getting reporting context directly into your K2 apps, but then also embed these into other tools as well. Right, but going above and beyond, K2's own process reporting is we understand there's people out there that have their own reporting tools that they want to use. We see the rise of Power BI and tools like Tableau out there that have rich analytic capabilities. And so we want to make it easy for you to use those third-party reporting technologies with K2. So this is kind of done through our OData provider, as well as in the instance of Power BI, where we give you free templates. You can just go to the Power BI online sites and be able to search for a K2 content pack, or you can go to our own site and download the Power BI template. And this is kind of gives you a full working template with K2 that you can expand and add additional information to. Right, and beyond that, to be able to use things like cognitive services and machine learning, some of those cloud services back into K2 process to ultimately drive even more automation. Right, so mobile, like I mentioned earlier, is a big key. When we say mobile, there's a couple things to keep in mind. One, we obviously want to support on multiple different devices, but we also want to do this from an online or an offline state. And this is, again, a key differentiator from us where, when we say offline, we truly mean offline, meaning we're not just taking those tasks from the workflow perspective, but we're taking the forms and all the data associated with the form. Right, so imagine if I'm a field service technician where I'm going out to the field to work on a piece of equipment in a remote location, right? I want to be able to look at, not only my task, but all the work details related to this work order. So again, K2's ability to bring and cache all that data securely onto the mobile device, work on that online, update and interact with those forms, and then when I get back into an online state, to be able to persist that data back to the respected systems, and also continue on in the workflow process. Right, but you also take advantage of some of the local device support, things like geolocation. Perhaps automatically load those work orders based on my location. To be able to take pictures and use for barcode scanning, or perhaps annotation. If we're doing repairs out there. So again, to be able to take advantage of the native camera to be able to take a picture, annotate that picture, and then save it along with it with a K2 form and process. Right, we also want you to be able to stay informed, so obviously all of your tasks will be available on your mobile device, as well as gets instant feedback and notification when you receive a task. So support for push notifications, so you have instant notification of when you have a new task. And they also be able to use traditional governance and control with mobile device management tools out there to deploy the K2 mobile app within your enterprise. So you can get the K2 mobile app publicly in any of the app stores, such as Google Play or the Apple Store. But again, for corporate compliance, should you want to use those MDM tools to deploy the K2 app, is certainly something that we support. Right, and so once we kind of built all those solutions and run it, it's really about how do we manage and govern these solutions. So K2 management is a key site, an aspect of the platform where you can centrally, manage all of your different solutions. Everything from managing your integration points, what line of business systems that you want to integrate with, who is allowed to integrate and use those integration points and those smart objects, everything from who's able to create and build K2 solutions, manage and run reports against those solutions. Virtually almost all aspects of the platform you can control through different access control systems. So here as an example, we've got perhaps a finance category here, and we've got a couple different solutions under finance. Again, you can control, very granular level, who has rights to, view the actual forms and solutions that are in there, and who has rights to build or modify the solutions themselves. So again, key access control on various aspects of the platform. But also self-management is here. It's important as well. We don't necessarily always want to go to IT to do some, basic management type functions. So, what if my errors go or my workflows go into an error state? How as I, the business, can, maybe resolve those or know that those are happening, manage my versions and who has rights to these things. So based on the level of management rights you have, you get to be able to administer different aspects of the solutions that you create. So again, and it's not just about empowering the business to build their own solutions, but we also want to give them the appropriate tools to ultimately, self-serve and manage the solutions that they build as well. Right, so how do we get started? Again, vast tooling out there to, create those solutions from scratch, but also we have, K2 Smart Starters to help you get started. A number of different, horizontal areas that we see from finance, sales and marketing and operations, legal and HR, even common IT systems and processes that we see out there. These are all available free off our site and as part of the platform. And this really gives you not only a quick way to get value out of the platform, but also see how they're built. We give you the full solution so you can crack open the K2 Designer and look at those workflows, look at the smart forms, see how we built them, and kind of use them as best practices to kind of build and accelerate your own development for your own solutions. So how do I run K2? So there's really two options. Use K2 in the cloud, that's fully managed cloud service from K2 with industry certifications and SLAs, global scale and support, and compliance and security. The other option is K25. Essentially, you run on your own servers within your own data center, either on premises or in your own private cloud that you run and operate. So again, K2 gives you, multiple choices in terms of how you want to deploy and run your K2 solutions. Right, so some of the best companies are running K2. We define success by, again, every organization, automating almost every process. And we're getting there, right? We see over 4,000 customers, running on K2, over 4 million users, taking advantage of the platform, and, 30% of the Fortune 100 companies running on K2. Again, K2 is for some of the largest, but also from the smallest companies as well, to be able to get value on what you can do with the platform. And we're really excited to see, what you can do with it as well. All right, so with that, let's maybe kind of take a look at what the product looks like and go through maybe a couple demos. So here we have the K2 Designer. And in the K2 Designer is really where you go to create, smart forms, workflow processes, views, or smart objects, which are, really the ability to integrate with other systems, but you can also create your own smart objects to have K2 store the data that you want to collect and display and use. Right, for this interest of time, let's take an existing form, maybe kind of build and enhance on this. Right, so I've got a simple quote submit form. So if I go ahead and open up this form, this will now open up into the K2 Forms Designer. And in this Forms Designer, this is where I can, add new fields for data collection. I can add additional views because essentially a smart form can be a collection of one or more views, depending upon, how complex and how much data do we need to display and ultimately collect on this particular form. So in this example, I've got a quote form where I have a quote details here. I've got the quote account details here that I can do a lookup on. I've got perhaps some line items to be able to do, easy one-to-many type relationships for associated records as part of this. I can have additional tabs. So here I've got one to be able to get some contact information, so I can route this around for digital signatures through DocuSign as another example. But here, one of the things that I also have is this particular view of account details. So if I go in and take a look at this, this is where we can now edit, a view. And again, a view is something that can be reused on one or more different smart forms. Right, so here I kind of get down to the control level where I can see, the account details. And in this example, account details may be tied to something like Salesforce, where I can see all the different properties that might be available to me for this particular account. So as an example, maybe I want to add, the status to this particular view, right? Maybe I want to move the label over here, maybe change the style or the layout, maybe the different size. Maybe we'll say 150 here. Again, so you can kind of, decide how you want to look this and make this look and feel. You have full control to be able to drag and drop, wherever you want within the particular canvas. I can take a look at existing controls, which often are, sometimes lookup controls or maybe autocomplete type controls that might be data bound to other systems. So here I'm working with a quote, and in that quote, it's wanting an account. And so an account might be tied to yet another different smart object to be able to pull the different account information. So this is where I can data bind or add another data source to the various different controls to do those lookups. So here I've got, all the different accounts, information and fields that I have in my line of business system that's now available to me within these various controls that I want to bind to. Right? But let's say, okay, great, I'm happy with this, but maybe I want to add some business logic to it. Right? And there's a very simple example where, let's say I want to be able to click show notes. I might want to author a simple rule to dictate, what's required, or perhaps show and hide different elements of this. So if I come in here and edit this rule right within this particular control, and now it says, hey, if this checkbox is checked, then go ahead and show the rich notes or the text box here, or then hide it. So again, very simple logic, but this is where the K2 SmartForms rules designer can be very comprehensive in terms of, really bringing in a lot of business requirements for data collection, data validation, and data display type pieces. And what's nice about this is that you can also see all the rules collectively for a form review at a glance. So any rules that you have, you can kind of dive into or click on the control and discover it that way as well. Right, so I'm happy with that layout, so I'm going to hit finish here, and I'm now going to come back to my original form where that quote details view is just a part of. And then maybe I want to do some other things here. Maybe I want to come in here and add some reports where maybe we want to get some process details related to this. So I'm going to say reports. And this is where we can use some of our charting controls to kind of give us access to some of those process metrics. So maybe I want to, as a manager that might review this later on, what's maybe the average cycle time to getting these quotes approved or run through the different system. Right, so you have full control over the look and feel and what you want to bring back into these types of forms. Right, so let's say, okay, I'm happy with this particular form. Now I want to build some kind of process with this. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this out. And what I can now do is I can run it right here. I can come in and say maybe, run this form, and every form gets its own unique URL. So you can run it right within any browser to be able to kind of look at the form, interact with it like you normally would here. Right, so this was the form that we just created or kind of modified here, where I've got the account details. You can see that I added that status field here that made that change. I've got my reports tab and some other pieces related to this. So again, I'm happy with that form, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and we're going to come back to designer here. And now I may want to create a new workflow against this form. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say, yep, that's what I want to do. We're going to design a new workflow. And within the K2 Designer, know that I can create forms independently and run them independently. I can create new workflows and run them independently, or I can integrate these things together. And this is essentially what I'm doing now. I'm taking a form and I want to create a new process against this form. All right, so let's name our workflow. We're just going to say this is a quote review, and we're going to say great. All right, and this will now drop us into the K2 Workflow Designer. So once I'm in this designer, then I can decide what do I want this process to do. So with K2, you may not necessarily always know exactly how you want your process to work. So K2 kind of allows you to model first and can configure later, right? So I can come in here and think and say, okay, well, if I have a quote form, I'm going to submit this form, and chances are it's going to go to the manager to review first. Let's go ahead and type that in. So I'll say manager review, right? And that manager will probably make some kind of decision. Maybe what those decisions are, I'm not sure yet, but we think will probably obviously be an approval one. So we'll say maybe they approve the quote. Maybe they come in here and they want to perhaps deny it. It sounds like maybe they need to also send it back for rework or request more information. So we'll say maybe more info requested, right? Let's correct that. Let's say requested, right? So once I have this, then I can decide, all right, I think this is kind of about it. Now I'm ready to go ahead and configure this, right? So this is where we can use those various shapes that are available to me. Again, logical shapes, basic shapes, integration, the smart objects, and various different other systems here. But one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drag over a task shape because we want to send a task to the manager so they have something to review. Again, I'm not going to present it with a lot of dialogues and heavy configuration here. A little lightly badge and say, hey, there's some additional work that might need to be done for this. And I said, okay, we understand that. But if I go down here and says, hey, we think this is probably going to be a decision, right? Based on, you have a task, more than likely you're going to want a decision after that. So this is where Smart Assist kicks in, and we kind of start auto-suggesting different shapes and configuration options based on how you model that workflow. So I'm going to say, yep, that's what I want to do. And if you notice, it automatically configured everything, and that badge went away. I didn't have to do anything else. Again, we know these based on predictive analysis and a lot of history on using K2. We know what those common patterns are, and we just try to pre-fill out and auto-configure based on some of those needs. But if I want, I can come in and override. So if I double click on this path, on this manager review step, I can know that there's additional actions that were auto-configured. I can come in here and add more if I would like. I can provide some instructions to the end user when they get this task. We'll say maybe, please review the quote, right? But I can also get access to all the backend systems that might have been related to that form, right? So remember I had those account details and quote details, and all that is available for me, right? Since I map that form to this workflow, all those smart objects or those data sources are available to me. So here I can see information about the whole quote. So, please review the quote, maybe, for, and maybe I want to drag over the account name as an example, right? So again, this is where you can use those smart objects as references. So we only have to do that integration once. And so that we don't not troubled with, hey, I already did the integration to the form. I don't have to want to do it again for the workflow. Again, you provide that integration point once and reuse that across the entire solution within K2. Right, so I'm pretty happy with that. So, maybe the approval step, perhaps I'll send an email here and say, it is now approved. Again, don't necessarily have to configure anything, it'll just work. But if I want to come in here and provide some additional details, I obviously can. I could say, the subject might be, quote, approval, right? In the body here, I might want to come in here and provide a little more message. This is where we might want to do some, more complex, HTML editing, which, we full support all kinds of different editing options based on how you want to format and construct these emails. It could be very, complex. So, for example, if I go to, k2.com, and let's say I just wanted to use this whole site template as my email template and want to use that. So great, automate process with platform. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste that and come in here and dump that into my email. And then we retain all the formatting, the imagery, and now I can come in and add additional fields and make this more dynamic should I want to do so. right? So I'm happy with that email formatting, at least in this example, and I can kind of go on to see what I want to do. Maybe the denied, we'll just kind of end this here. But, more information requested, this may be, an additional branch that we might need, and we might want some, other complexity or rules related to my process here. So what I can do is, let's say if they request more information, maybe based on certain information, I might want to have different paths here. I might want to say, okay, if it's more information, I may want to have one particular path based on some certain criteria. Maybe I want to have a different path in parallel to that, and perhaps I want to come in here and based on some of those parallel paths. I might want to merge this, right? So I'll come in here and maybe merge this particular piece. So again, serial, parallel, branching, split, and merging. There's all kinds of different workflow patterns that you can essentially apply into K2 based on the logic and flow, and how you want this to behave. Right, but again, the badging is coming into play, and real-time validation, showing me that hey, a merge step has been empty. We might need to link this to something. So I say, great, get it. Show me where that's at. I'm not sure where to go, so I can click on it. Directly takes me to the configuration page that's needed, and it says, hey, you did a split, and you want to merge this. What do you want to merge from? So I can essentially just select that step, and then go ahead and select it here. And then from here, I can come in and say, maybe this is another end step, once that is done, right? So very quickly, I can model out, simple and also, some complex different behavior based on what I'm trying to do. But there's another scenario where I want to have additional rules and validation as part of this. And this is where some of the rules framework comes into play. Where for this decision, I might have something simple like approve, deny. But what if I want to add a little bit more complexity to that? So this is where you can crack open our rules designer, where you have more of a visual way of constructing these rules. So you can kind of think of these as Lego blocks of building up these rule constructs to say, in this example, if the manager, the outcome was approved, then I want to go down the approved path. Otherwise, if it's deny, maybe I want to deny, or more request, more information needed, maybe I want to go a different path. So I can come in here and choose these different scenarios. I might also want to add, an additional condition to some of these things. So if I come in here and say, and I also want, if it's denied, if the, let's say, on the actual quote itself, if I come in here to, if I come in here to the actual amount and perhaps, drag the amount and then say, if it is also greater than, maybe, uh, you know, 10,000 here, I also want to make sure this is denied. I might want to have another else condition that branches out from that. So again, based on the different business rules you want to create, you can come in here and use some of the workflow context, or again, have full access to some of the business data in terms of how you want to have that routing logic work within your particular workflow. Right, but if I'm happy to this, I can come in here and save it and deploy it. And then if I want to run this, there's another site. If I come in here and go to the K2 Workspace, so if I go to this custom workspace, this is where I've now created, I've got a link to my new quote form that we can see here. I have access to, all of my different tasks that I have. So here I've got, tasks within various states based on different workflow processes that I'm having. I can come in here and say, if I want to say, let's look at this manager review step in our quote. This is where, again, we're kind of seeing that quote form that we showed earlier. I can see all the different views that are related to this. And then right at the bottom, we can come in here and see, do I want to take direct action against this form? Perhaps I want to, approve, decline, or send for rework, whatever those actions happen to be related to it. What I can also do is take a look at some of the reporting against this. So if I come in and exit out of my tasks, one of the things that we can do is provide some contextual reports to the processes that we're involved with. So here I have a report for that quote process that we've been a part of, where I can see, how many instances we've been running, how many are active, what's kind of our trend line over a period of time. I can see all my different other workflow instances and to be able to drill into these. So if I click on perhaps maybe one of an older one, I can see how long, certain steps have been running for, what have been the actual active task related to this. So again, full fidelity in terms of getting, driving to some root cause analysis in terms of what's going on. You as the end user for these tasks can also get some reports. So here's an example of my overview where you can see all about the work that you've been a part of. So how many active tasks do you have? Where are these tasks across different processes? What are some of the different trends on how much task load? So it looks like my task load is increasing here. Where am I spending the most time across multiple tasks that I might have within the different various workflows? So I really get a little bit more insight in terms of where I'm spending my time. But as I mentioned earlier, you can use third-party tools such as Power BI to create custom reports. So that way you can use, our OData services to, get access to all the line of business systems that you're using Smart Objects to integrate with, as well as all the process data, and use that in things like Power BI and Tableau and embed those back into K2 Smart Forms. So I hope this gives you a good overview of the product. Now let me switch over here and let's talk a little bit about how K2 is packaged and priced here. So K2 believes that the cost of entry should be low so you can see value right away. So as you grow the number of solutions you create in K2, you can pick the right package that best matches what you need. So here we have four key packages here. The first one being Starter, which is available in cloud only. You can get started as a very low cost. You can build up to 5 workflows and up to 25 forms. Again, this is something that's very low cost of entry to immediately start seeing value and getting something out of the platform. But then you can move up to Builder, which is kind of your starting point for K2.5, which is for on-premises or your own private cloud. But Builder is also available for K2 Cloud. It gives you, much more workflows and forms that you can build. And as you can see, as you move up the solutions that you build, then the pricing will match accordingly based off of that. So again, we really believe that we want to get as many people on the platform as possible. And this is something that we're being very aggressive with in terms of giving the right packaging and pricing to allow those low barrier to entry and so you see value right away from the platform. So to kick off the launch of the new K2 platform, we're really excited to offer a K2 Cloud promotion that's available between now and the end of the year. Essentially, you can get 1 year of K2 Cloud Enterprise for the cost of the K2 Starter. That gives you 1,000 workflows and 5,000 forms for the same cost as the starter package. Again, this is something that's available really only until now, until the end of the year. And we're doing this as a promotion to really kind of help launch and kind of share the excitement that we have for the new K2 Cloud and K2.5 platform. So if you have any questions related to that, we really want to hear from you. Again, anything from, curious about your different solutions or how can K2 help. We want to be very honest and upfront with you in terms of what we can do and how we can genuinely help you and your organization. So you can contact us at the number that you see, or you can email at sales@k2.com, and folks can answer, take those questions. We'll make sure we get the right folks involved to address any needs or questions that you have. So I hope this kind of gives you a good and broad overview of the platform, and we hope to hear from you. Thanks so much for the time. Bye bye.